Thanks everyone for being here. This is the May 6th update. If you have seen the news in the last few days, you'll know that there's been a few more positive cases of COVID-19 reported in Pennington County, several more reported statewide. So there's a total now statewide of 2,779 total positive cases, with 773 currently active. The deaths have increased in South Dakota, now at 29, the majority of which, well, 50% of which in Minnehaha County, and the majority of which in that area. And so as we start to absorb the bad news that comes in regarding the viral spread and the deaths and the hospitalizations, we have to keep reminding ourselves that our goal, our community's goal, our state's goal was never to try to avoid this virus. It was never arrogant enough to believe that everyone else in the world would be affected by this, but not us. So our goal was always, and still is, to protect our life-saving hospital resources. And we do that by slowing the spread, by putting in place measures to mitigate the viral spread, to make ourselves safer, to protect ourselves and our family and our friends and customers. And so that's what's happening. I think in part, western South Dakota and specifically Pennington County's slow beginning in this pandemic is in part to some of those mitigation efforts. So on the same topic, a couple of weeks ago, I created a survey and put that out on Facebook. It was an online survey with 7 questions. And the responses to the questions were surprising to me. But the more I read them, the more I think about them, they're really very much in line with how I feel and how I think the majority of people feel. We had around 1,260 responses. And a lot of the responses indicate a fairly high level of general anxiety over the pandemic and its effect on us. About almost 75% indicated they had a great deal, a lot, or a moderate amount of worry or concern about the impact of COVID-19. Only 22% reported having little or no concern over the pandemic. The top 3 challenges listed by respondents were, number 1, general anxiety. That was 61%. Social isolation, almost 22%. And the challenges of traveling to grocery stores and traveling to take care of families were around 30%, and making payments such as loan payments at about 8.5%. So primarily the concerns that we've seen from the respondents to this survey have to do with some form of mental health, which is completely understandable. I know people joke about it, they post memes about it, they talk about homeschooling, and they talk about getting tired of each other and your gray hair growing out and all of these things that are kind of humorous at the time. But in reality, being forced either by your loss of a job or by fear or social pressure to stay home and not do anything does take a toll on people. So about 76% of the respondents indicated that they could sustain their current situation for 1 or more months. 50% of all the respondents indicated they could sustain for more than 3 months. And a fairly low percentage indicated that they were having a very difficult time with sustaining as it is. And we're releasing the statistics on the survey, the general answers to the survey to the media today. So based on that survey, we're going to adjust our city communication plan, because we also asked respondents how they like to hear from us and how often. And so we've learned a few things there as well. Now, it was a survey put out on Facebook, but nearly 80% of the people prefer to receive their information on Facebook, some through traditional media channels, and some would prefer to receive it through email and text message. So we're going to try to start up those channels of communication as well, and also more closely match the frequency of updates, which the majority of which seem to be wanting some type of an update from us more than once a week. So on a different topic, code enforcement has been busy recently helping businesses comply with the new regulations. The primary complaint has been on issues related to building capacity. There's a feeling that businesses are allowing too many people in. And our employees have responded, have found those businesses to be in compliance. And so I think what we're seeing is we're experiencing the discomfort that customers or potential customers have over the amount of people in those buildings. The second most frequent complaint is a complaint of masks not being worn by food service workers. And again, we are contacting those folks, educating them, helping them find the resources they need to locate masks if that's the issue. And our goal is to have 100% compliance with that. I think it's very important for all of us to remember that the person primarily responsible for your safety is you. So we have some local government regulations, which there was never any illusion that we were going to be able to control human behavior by passing an ordinance. City ordinances and laws are just like chain link fences. They keep the honest people honest. They do not keep people from violating those things. So we're taking a cautious approach here to not create a police state, but also at the same time do what we can to maximize the safety of our citizens. But the number one person who is in charge of taking care of us is ourselves. So when you get to that store parking lot, if you're already uncomfortable with the amount of cars in the parking lot, just don't go. And I have to tell you that I have been wanting to go to one particular store in Rapid City for 2 weeks now. I cannot find a time when the parking lot is at such a level that I feel good doing so. So I've delayed a project at home. I wish I wouldn't have to do that, but I am balancing my own personal safety, my feelings of comfort and security with my need to get that type of project done. So if you're not comfortable, don't go. Traffic around Rapid City seems to have increased, especially starting last Friday. We don't have new traffic count numbers on this at this point, but we may get them. But there's a lot of movement in Rapid City, a lot of cars moving. And the retail activity at large stores seems to be very high. There's a lot of cars in the parking lots, there's a lot of shoppers, and a lot of purchasing going on. So all this must be filtered through a safety barrier, a feeling of safety and security that we all have. We have to decide how much we want to subject ourselves to that. But now, to the big issue, the status of the yard waste sites. I think in my time in public service, which is decades, I don't know if I've seen a topic that has angered more people, and that is not having the ability to take your yard waste to the local neighborhood dumpster. That is a service provided by the Rapid City Solid Waste Division, and we have had those up in years past. Those things take employees to change out the dumpsters, especially on nice days. And so there's a constant movement of employees and equipment between the yard waste sites and the landfill to bring out a new dumpster, place it, pick up the full dumpster and take it back and empty it. So that we have full-time employees who do that on a regular basis, day after day after day. And so we have not been able to open those yet because of the manpower required for it. Now, the manpower is short because the volume of personally hauled trash into the landfill has been as high as triple the normal and expected rate. So all of the available employees have been busy at the landfill. So, you know, personally and I guess professionally, I view the neighborhood yard waste site as a luxury. It's a nice service to have, but it is not an essential service such as sewer and water and public safety are. And so there's been a bit of a disagreement or philosophical disagreement over the importance of those yard waste sites. And you know, just me talking about it will anger people. So that's something else that's not going unnoticed, is that people are becoming very angry, very critical in this time. And you know, I raised children. I've had teenagers who have hated me one day and loved me the next day. And I think anybody who's been in that scenario can kind of understand how when you're the authority figure, the only thing you cannot do is please everyone. And so we have made business decisions that were not necessarily in the best interest of the resident out there who has a bunch of yard waste or branches to get rid of. We were requiring them to drive the extra few miles to get to the landfill. So we have not hired additional staff for that because we're under a hiring freeze, a self-imposed hiring freeze. We're cutting $7 million out of the remaining 2020 budget in order to stay in the black at the end of the year. That's the responsible thing for a business to do. When your revenue's down, you make cuts. So we've made cuts, so it doesn't make sense to add additional resources to provide a service that is not an essential service. So having said all that, the volume of the personally hauled trash has plateaued, maybe coming down a little bit. We're making some adjustments in the workforce, stealing from some other city divisions with qualified drivers. It takes us commercial driver's license and training to operate these bigger trucks. And at this point, we're planning to reopen the yard waste sites starting Monday, May 11th. And I need to remind everyone, though, that if you dump at those yard waste sites now, that's the same as littering. We should not have to bring a front-end loader out there and clean up those sites. So hold on to that yard waste until Monday when there's a dumpster available. Also, I need to remind you that the curbside pickup of yard waste is still going on. It always has. You use the brown recyclable bags for your grass clippings or twigs, put those by the curb, and the driver will empty those into the truck. Also, you may have stacks of twigs under certain circumstances. We're not going to clean up your yard for you or take out 1,000 pounds of logs and limbs, but if you bundle those twigs in 4-foot bundles and tie them with twine, the driver will also throw those in. And if not, they won't. So, on to other topics. The library, during this time, the lobby has been closed. Only the drive-up's been open. And lately we've been seeing 100 cars a day drive through that window. And for the month of April, we've distributed 8,000 items through that drive-up window. So that's about 1 car every 2 minutes coming through the drive-up at the library. Also in April, 500 digital books were checked out, which is a 10% increase over March, which I guarantee was an increase over February. Now here's another topic, the status of the emergency shelter. We have been working on an emergency homeless shelter. Now, this is not just a homeless shelter. This is a homeless shelter for sick, chronic homeless individuals, because those folks cannot be housed with other individuals. So in order to avoid an outbreak in our homeless facilities, we have set up a shelter at the Civic Center at the Rushmore Hall. The startup costs to get ready at this point have been covered almost entirely by the John T. Vucurvich Foundation, but additional costs will likely need to be advanced by local government and will be subject to reimbursement from the federal or state government. The theory is that COVID-19 will spread rapidly through the homeless population. And having an emergency shelter of this nature will be safer for everyone to have the sick, chronic homeless isolate in this facility under supervision. So currently, we're experiencing the vague and normal nature of the bureaucratic funding process. We have some hints or some underwhelming assurances that what we're doing will be subject to reimbursement. We're trying to firm those up, but just that fact alone has stopped people from offering to front the money. We're working on that very diligently to get those things lined out. And as far as what exactly will be reimbursed and to whom. The demand for this particular function is very low at the moment. Not seeing ill, chronic homeless individuals. I think we all agree that could be just a matter of time, but the demand is low. We do have the ability to start the shelter up immediately in the short term, if needed. We could start it up today if needed. But this will be, again, for sick, chronic, homeless individuals. And just to take another step backwards, a chronic homeless individual is an individual who is not seeking services, not interested in being helped, is in a lifestyle, and cannot be brought out of it by anyone else. So it's a very challenging population. Often there are addictions that also complicate the matter, and so that's why supervision is needed to make sure that these individuals get the proper care that they need if and when they become ill. So final thoughts from me, moving into this next week or so of the pandemic. Brace yourself for a different summer and fall. We all have fond memories of how it used to be when we weren't quarantined or when we weren't feeling like we were going to become ill if we went out in public. But I'm just saying, brace yourself for a different season. We're not through the pandemic yet. We have a long ways to go. And we're taking a slow start at it, which is an advantage, but it prolongs it. Remember the goal. The goal is to protect our hospital resources for if and when we need them. Also, protect yourself. Be vigilant. Don't expose yourself recklessly or negligently or unnecessarily. Take those precautions. Also, protect your vulnerable family members, your friends, and your neighbors. And together, we keep hearing we'll get through this together, but I have to just reinforce that together means together. It doesn't mean separately. So if you have that neighbor who appears to be in a vulnerable group, elderly, or some underlying health condition, or you may know them and know what they're going through, offer to make that errand run for them. Offer to get their groceries for them, to bag up their yard waste and take it to the local neighborhood dumpster. Do those things for your neighbor. I promise it'll be good for them and it'll be good for you. Stay positive throughout all this and monitor your mental health and do something every day to maintain it and improve it. No one is invulnerable to mental health issues. No one. In fact, 1 in 4 people suffer from mental illness. And May is Mental Illness Awareness Month. We're going to hear a lot from us regarding the mental illness issue. So also up to us to monitor and do something to keep ourselves healthy in body and mind. And as I've said in the past, I'll probably say again, during this time period, reduce the national media blitz. Stay local. There is nothing on any of the national media channels that is of interest to you that you can't find on a local channel. You're just less likely to get the sensationalism and the competitive journalistic tactics that you will get on a national scale. We have local homegrown people here providing journalism to our citizens in our region, and that's where we should be getting our information. So that's all I have. I would take any questions from the media that's here.
Connor, you want to go over here to the microphone and then introduce yourself and ask the question? Thanks.
This one? Okay. I'm Connor Matheson, Dakota Territory News. So I had a question from one of our reporters. You've had a meeting with Little League Baseball about them being able to start their season, and they've submitted a resume to play proposal. What guidelines are you wanting them to follow before they're allowed to play?
Those proposals coming from the organizations that lease a city field, such as a baseball field, go to our Parks and Recreation Department. They're evaluated against the CDC guidelines. So at this early stage, the proposals are largely to gather and practice. So there's sufficient spacing being guaranteed with these teams. We will not have grandstands full of people sitting shoulder to shoulder for the practices, and they'll be in groups of 10 or less. So we've evaluated those plans from Little League, and now we're getting them from soccer, and as well as other groups of that nature. So that's basically it, to provide a safety plan for their members, their coaches, and their parents, and eventually their fans.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nathan Thompson with the Rapid City Journal. Mayor, outside of the hotspot in Sioux Falls, we're seeing trends that would equate Rapid City to seeing positive test results along the scale of other rural states. Talk about your plan for communication with health professionals and what your feeling would be if the ordinance and the resolution that we're currently under needs to be modified.
Well, that's a big question. I have regular conversations with the healthcare providers in Rapid City. I have far more conversations with Monument Health than anyone else. This week I have had conversations with Monument and also with the Oyate Healthcare Center out at the Susan campus. And so we do have regular and open communication there. We are monitoring with Monument Health the trends in their short-term predictive models, and so we're working together as a team on that front. If and when cases rise, we'll be monitoring the use of hospital beds and to see if those are outside the predicted trends, and that we should know when to take more action. Now, ideally, we would be able to communicate this with the public in a way to achieve a far greater likelihood of voluntary compliance. I think when the City Council voted on the the emergency ordinance at the end of March, that was appropriate. I think the regulations now that we have imposed recently, citywide, are also appropriate. But I don't know that there is a level of lockdown or government intervention that could guarantee any greater outcome, when in fact, again, the goal is to protect the hospital resources. So we'll be taking our cue from the predictive modeling from our hospital partners to know if and when to act differently. But ideally, we'll be communicating those things and making stronger recommendations to the elderly and the immune compromised to take specific precautions. So, perfect world, I'd like not to modify the ordinance, but the fact of the matter is the ordinance could be modified on short order to impose additional regulations if needed.
Dave Kidd, News Center 1. You mentioned that the city's already looking to make cuts to the budget of about $7 million, and part of that was the hiring freeze for city employees. Are there any additional services or cuts that the city's looking to make to reach that $7 million mark?
Well, absolutely. There's a number of cuts from city departments which will reduce staff, reduce programs, delay turnaround times for work product, perhaps. Also, we'll be hiring far less, approximately 50% of our temporary summer help. The proposal is not complete, and the city council members have not all reviewed it yet, so I need to take some time with them individually behind the scene to let them know what the proposal will be. But I think you'll see less city services going into the summer. Again, the essential city services are water, sewer, solid waste, public safety, so those get special priority, and all of the services below that will have to be and are being evaluated differently. So we may see some recreation programs that don't come back for the rest of the year, and that will be a specific technique, a tactic for saving money. I am proposing that we use a little bit of our reserve fund. We have about $8 million in reserves for times like this, and I'm proposing we use up to $2 million of that, along with a number of other things. And some capital improvements projects will be delayed. And those are things that also are they're not critical infrastructure. They are refinishing of city parking lots and some other projects which I'll have in detail at a later time. But so that's it. We're targeting about $7 million. That's based on a prediction from our finance officer and from the economist at the Black Hills Knowledge Network. And we do not have the appropriate sales tax receipts yet to see if our estimate is in line with reality. So we'll need to really wait through May to get a better idea when we get the actual receipts to know if we're barking up the right tree. And we'll make adjustments then accordingly.
Additionally, has the city received any numbers from the Rapid City Airport during this pandemic time period? And what is business, if so, what does business look like at the airport?
Well, I reported on some of those earlier on in this pandemic season. Their numbers were down to 20-some travelers flying out of the airport in a day. I meant to ask this morning at our morning meeting, but I forgot. So I don't have those numbers. Still very, very low. I have seen the airlines taking some measures to enhance the safety and confidence in the airlines with requiring passengers to wear masks and a number of other things. So I would expect we'll have some more details on that as time goes on. Any other questions from the room? All right, well, thank you everyone for being here, and we'll talk to you again.